Hey, Falcons and NFL fans. Welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins with Tom Pollen. I'm Dave Holcomb. Chris Smitherman producing, but not here with us today. He'll be back with us live next week, he told me today. So we have missed Chris the last few weeks, but he should be back next weekend. But we have a full show for you today. The third day of the NFL draft has just begun a couple minutes ago. So if any interesting picks come up, we can react in live time, which is always kind of fun to do. But a lot happened in the first three rounds. Thursday, the first round, obviously, and then the second two rounds last night. And the Falcons getting three players in the first three rounds, and the class is going to be highlighted by Texas running back Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, and I've been saying for about 3 weeks now that considering how the Falcons were approaching free agency and the work they did on defensive free agency, it gave me the feeling that they were setting up for Bijan Robinson to be their first pick. And you kind of knew he was going to sit there because positional value ain't as big for, isn't that great English? Isn't as good for for running backs anymore. I don't know if that should be true. I think teams kind of found the running back position a little bit last season, but we'll see. We know that the Falcons have struggled in pass rush last 3 years, but they went the explosive route. They went for that once in a generation talent. We'll see how that works out for them.
I'm laughing because I think we've been here before. I think we talked about that last year, going for the once-in-a-generation wide receiver in Drake London, and then once-in-a-generation tight end the year before that with Kyle Pitts. So right. I think we're going to have a lot to say about the Robinson pick over the next hour. We'll try and get to other topics as well, but I think we're talking a lot about Robinson today, and we want to make you a part of the show as well. I know that at least Brian was kind of all in on taking Bijan Robinson. I think a couple other fans wanted that as well. So
yeah,
maybe I don't really not 100% sure how Tom is going to where he's going with his take on the Robinson pick. I know I'm not 100% love it. But I think some of our fans are going to love it, the reaction we get from them. And we want to hear those reactions. So send us your comments if you're watching live, or tweet at us if you're watching on replay at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app in your app store. And when you do, use our promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So some free money for you to get started there. On Prize Picks. Good time to download the app and kind of grow familiar with it during the NFL offseason, so you can hit the ground running using it when the NFL regular season comes back in September. So, we won't give you suggestions on what picks to make in the app until September, but there are lots of sports that you can get started with. So go ahead, download the app, use our promo code ASU.
Yeah, certainly are. I mean, if you want to get used to using it for football, hey, USFL is going on. So
there you go. Yeah.
Give USFL a try. See how well you can do with player props for NFL's minor league. Let's put it that way.
Closest thing.
And as always, I got the latest cricket matches for you on Prize Picks. So, you can bet cricket. You can do player props for cricket. So, I mean, I know that means a lot to Atlanta fans. Not just because it's cricket. I mean,
yeah, Atlanta's a hotbed for cricket. You're right.
I know. Oh, okay.
So we've got some comments already flowing in. We love to see that. Tony's here. Good afternoon, Tony. Falcons first round pick, he says, was more of a surprise to me than a disappointment. Well, that's good. I mean, surprise isn't necessarily bad. I think it was maybe more surprising for people that didn't follow the Falcons mock drafts or kind of see what their targets would be because I got some texts from friends out of town that said, wow, I'm really surprised they went with a running back. And, I think we follow the team and fans of the team probably weren't as surprised, but I guess Tony was a little bit surprised though.
Yeah.
And Will Cotton says, I couldn't have been more excited about the Bijan pick. So Will is on board with that. Randy says, please tell me why the Birds don't take more dogs. That's Bulldogs. Randy, we're going to talk about that because there was a great Bulldog on the board when the Falcons took Robinson at number 8. So that'll be one of the angles that we attack today on the show. And Chosen One says, I'm hyped on today. Hope Arthur Smith get another pick. So thanks so much for the comments coming in. I think we got some first-time commenters as well.
We do.
So keep them flowing. We want to hear what you guys think about the Falcons. We're going to talk a lot about Robinson, but really their draft in general. What you think about what the players the Falcons have gotten so far, and they're going to make a few more picks today. And if you have any thoughts on other teams, we can touch upon that as well. A lot to talk about when it comes to the NFL draft.
Yeah, really is. It's going to be fun. It's going to be an interesting fourth day. Still some interesting players. I was reading Pro Football Focus earlier today, and they have their list of 100 players left on the board that they kind of like, that look good to them. So this is where you can kind of find your depth, where you find your prospects, where you find guys who maybe are diamonds in the rough. So today is that day, and it's going to be interesting to see what positions the Falcons take, who they consider to be at the top of their board when their number comes up. It's always a fascinating day. You always find stars that come out of the third day, but it's not easy. This is where you rely on your scouting.
And from what I understand, this draft's strength is not necessarily the entire third day, but the middle rounds. We heard that last night on the broadcast on ESPN. That round 3 was kind of a strength for the draft, especially certain positions like tight end, cornerback, and I think that might filter into at least the 4th round, where this draft has a lot of depth to it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that, tight end, edge rush, edge rusher again, those words keep coming out of my mouth. But tight end and, again, edge rusher, cornerback, defensive backs there have been quite a few runs on them in this draft. And I think scouts feel that there are more to be had. And it's going to be interesting to see how that runs. Interesting to see. There really hasn't been a run on linebackers. Linebackers have not been really well thought of in this draft.
Yeah, that was one of the positions that was pretty thin. And guard, I think, was another position that I've read was pretty thin. But the Falcons got a guy that looks like he's going to slot right in at left guard. And we're going to talk about him today, too. Gary has a question about him. Gary, we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's lead off with Robinson. Falcons taking the running back at number 8 overall. We kind of kicked it off that we've heard this before, where Terry Fontenot going for, maybe not the splash player, but the skill position player. And it's hard to nip it. It's hard to really get upset about it, because you could argue, at least in 2 of the 3 players' cases, that they were the best player available, and they were the clear-cut best available player. And that's a formula, a strategy that I've always stressed. But obviously, you don't pick in a vacuum, and there is, a level of trying to target needs with the best available player, or if the best available player where you're picking isn't a huge need, you trade back, maybe you trade up to make sure you get a need and a player that's best available a little bit earlier. Fontenot elected not to do that, elected to take what he thought was best available player. I think they got a great player. I think they got a generational running back. But it's hard for me to love the pick because it wasn't the biggest need, not the second biggest need, not even the third biggest need on the Falcons roster right now.
No, and I think they could have gone deeper into the draft and still gotten a good running back. However, they took one of the best players in this draft and got him at 9. So you have to say in that mode, it's a success. Because you got probably the second player on a lot of sites draft board, second or third player on a lot of sites draft board, and you got him at 9. And probably one of the players that people feel is the most suited for success in the NFL. So the Falcons' offense is going to be exciting next year.
And
go ahead.
Absolutely. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No,
I was trying to build on your point. There's a level of instant gratification with the pick too, that is going to immediately help the team. And and fans love that. Fans want to see the immediacy with these draft picks.
Right. So, I think it works out pretty well. As I say, Arthur Smith, the way he approached things in Tennessee as offensive coordinator, he had that back. He had that back who could pretty much do everything. And Derrick Henry can't catch the ball too. So don't be surprised if Bijan Robinson takes a role in the passing game.
Yeah.
As well as the run game.
Yeah.
They basically made things about as easy as they can to run Desmond Ridder. They've given him some weapons. They put players in front of him with Bergeron. They added another offensive lineman. So you've given them this solid, these solid players to work with.
Yeah.
And I do like that. And I know a lot of people in Chicago are saying the same thing. How do you let Jalen Carter slip down? How do you pass him up? How do you, how do you not grab that kind of talent in the first round? And
that's what Randy wants to know.
The thing is, what the Eagles have that, the Falcons and the Bears who picked after the Falcons don't have right now, and maybe the Falcons have it a little bit more with Grady Jarrett, but a guy in the backfield on the defensive side of the football who can keep Carter focused.
Yeah.
And keep his head in the game, keep his head on the field. And kind of that peer pressure. These defensive veterans who can come up to Carter and say,
positive influence, right? The positive that's going to put him on the right track, the winning culture that you can put him in and have a positive impact on him.
Right. Philadelphia doesn't. Philadelphia has that. They've lost a couple of important players this offseason, but they still have that veteran presence. Those guys who are going to take Carter in hand, put their arm around him and say, this is how we do things in Philadelphia. This is how we play defense here. And, keep on the straight path and you will succeed here. And you got to remember, it's not always about the coaches. It's about the guys on the field and what they are going to bring to that pick. How are they going to help that pick? So I think the Eagles are best suited for Jalen Carter. A guy with question marks, guy with a lot of talent, but a guy with question marks. Both on the field. I've seen some experts. I've seen some people on Twitter. I've seen some people on NFL sites who don't necessarily think that Jalen Carter is the player that a lot of people, that he's coming out of college, with the reputation of being. So,
really?
Yeah.
Is that because of his, his pro day? It was 9 pounds heavier than.
No. I know a guy. I see a guy on Twitter. He goes, he went through the entire senior year tape and really made a good argument about the fact that Jalen Carter maybe isn't as good as makes some impact plays, but also takes plays off. So, excuse me, I'm sorry. But we don't have a cough button here, so there's not much I can do.
Hard to do that when you're on video.
Yeah. So, sometimes he takes plays off. He makes spectacular plays, but, not that everyday guy that you might want, or not that, again, Pro Bowl talent that you're looking for in the top 10 picks of the draft. So, sorry. A lot of question marks as a player.
That's interesting because, I saw some negativity because of his pro day weigh-in, and he had a bad, let's just say it, he had a terrible draft process just because, he was up there with Bijan Robinson as the best available player when this whole started around the Super Bowl, or even before that, if you want to say, the offseason began for the teams that missed the playoffs like the Falcons, in January. Around then, he was clear cut number one guy available, or at least top three. So,
well, again, as far as players, this is a player with a big question mark. He has done it on the field, but you want to make sure that he stays focused on the field and can put these off-field issues behind him, and mature as a professional player, as well as improve his skills as a defensive lineman. So, and the Falcons just don't have that presence that can do that can have that influence on him. The Bears don't have that defensive presence. Both teams are still building on defense to try to shore up a weak part of the ball that everybody noticed in 2022 that, both teams had a problem with. And that's why the Bears traded back and let the Eagles take Carter and then took their offensive lineman in the first round, because they didn't feel like, you knew Carter has the potential, but, and I'm sure the pre-draft meetings that all teams held with draft prospects before Thursday night, I'm sure that had a lot to do with it too.
Well, I want to react to that, but I also want to bring in a comment from Justin. He and I wanted to mention this as well because I've got the draft on behind me, and he brings up the Eagles just took Keelan Ringo, which isn't a surprise. And yet the Eagles just keep taking Georgia players on defense, had the best defense in the league last year, arguably. Yes. And they're just identified talent as, the number one factor. And the Eagles very clearly, I think the message is the best talent in college was on the back-to-back defending champions, and that's Georgia. So,
yeah.
But you don't have a problem with them the Falcons passing on Carter to take Robinson.
I don't have a problem with them passing on Carter. I do have a problem with them passing on other edge rushers in the draft when they had a chance with their second pick.
The second round pick.
I have a problem with the Falcons not taking an edge rusher with their first pick, because, as I said before, I want some snarl on this defense. You don't have it. You just don't have a guy that quarterback is going to look at, point to, and say, this is a guy we have to stop. This is a guy we have to, do something about. And it's a rough thing for a defense not to have that. Apparently, the Falcons may think that Arnold Ebiketie is ready to take a step up this year. It's possible that they're, in their opinion, in their thought process, in their scouting process, that they think Ebiketie is ready to play, ready to break out. So, but I think you're taking a chance on that instead of taking a player who, is rated up fairly high and you think can he has more potential than Ebiketie did coming out of college. Like Miles Murphy out of Clemson, Keion White would have been an interesting pick for the Falcons because a lot of people talked up Keion White as being a guy who would be, who was talented and had the potential to be a difference maker on the NFL level. So I'm a little surprised, as I say, the Falcons didn't go for them and stayed, again, went with the offense. They're going to be an exciting offense this year.
They are.
They are going to be an exciting offense.
That's true. And, it's interesting because Fontenot kind of said that. Fontenot also brought up selling jerseys and how Robinson was a guy that fans are going to like and that fans are going to want to wear their jerseys, and that he was a high character guy that you want your kid emulating, looking up to, and maybe that was throwing a little shade towards Carter. But
I think exactly, without saying the man's name, yes.
But what was interesting, I don't know if you saw this video, Fontenot is sitting next to Arthur Smith, and the three guys that he mentioned of the players that you want to wear their jerseys were Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson. And Fontenot is hyping up these three guys. Those are his first round picks. And then Arthur Smith kind of interjects quietly. He's like, well, you want your kid to wear Chris Lindstrom's jersey too, or you also want him to wear Grady Jarrett's jersey. He was like, it was like the coach is like interjecting to make sure that the fan base knows that they're not playing fantasy football here, that it's not just tight ends, running backs, and wide receivers.
Yes.
And that's the concern with the pick for me is you talked about the Falcons are still building their defense, and that's why they can't afford to take Carter. But when are they going to build the defense? When are they going to dedicate high draft picks to the defense? Like, they've had top 10 picks the last 3 years, and they've taken skill position players each time. And a running back, I think it's kind of, you talked about the value of or lack of value with a running back selection. There's some truth to that. I do think that we've swung too far to say that running backs aren't valuable at all. But I think the take I would have with running backs is that they have a short lifespan. And maybe back in the day where Kerry Burns had the shiny ornament thing with
hood ornament. Yep.
Wide receivers was the luxury pick. Well, wide receivers isn't a luxury pick anymore. Wide receiver is a priority in the passing modern day NFL offenses. Running back is the luxury. Running back, you could argue, is the shiny ornament that you put on your car when everything else is ready. And it's not all ready for the Falcons.
No, it's not.
They already had some quality running backs on the roster that can help out Desmond Ridder next year. And look, this is by no means, I don't want to say anything negative about Robinson. He's going to come in. He's going to be a great player. He's going to be a popular player. He's going to sell jerseys. He's going to fill seats. He's going to do a lot of positive things. But is he going to help the team win more games? And is he going to help the team win more games like in the long term because of that short lifespan for a running back? If this team was more ready to compete now, then the pick would make sense. But I don't think the team is a Super Bowl contender and you put a running back on there and that's like the cherry on top.
It is.
When are they going to use high draft picks on the defense?
Well, and that's the point we've been making for the last 3-4 weeks, Dave, is this is the time. You got edge rushers in this draft. This is the time to grab one. And I've been saying all along, I wanted an edge rusher. However, again, the way they went about their business of free agency, the players they picked up, it made me think that the thoughts in the Falcons draft room is, we've already done some things for our defense. We've built up some capabilities for our defense.
Yes.
The Saints linebacker that they signed, this is a guy that showed last year that he can put pressure on the quarterback and play some outstanding outside linebacker. So to me, it says that the Falcons think they have made some moves that are going to improve their defense and make their defense more effective next year, but I don't think they've done enough to make their defense a dangerous defense. And to me, if you want to make your defense better, if you want to make your secondary better, the place you do that is at edge rusher. Because quarterbacks just have too much time right now to throw the ball against Falcons. And it's been that way for 3 years now.
Yeah. Or you could, do the reverse and draft another cornerback. Christian Gonzalez was available at number 8 and
could have taken him.
We talked about them potentially targeting at that spot. But yeah, the Falcons had 39 sacks in Arthur Smith's first 2 seasons. 39 sacks. They were 31st and last, or maybe it was the other way. I think they were last in 2021 and second to last in last year. And the next worst team in sacks was the Raiders with, I believe, 62. The second worst sack team had 13 more sacks. No, I'm sorry. I can't do math. 23 more sacks.
Yes.
23 more sacks
than the
Falcons did. The Falcons didn't even have 23 sacks in 2021. They had fewer than that. So it's a whole season of sacks they're behind. And that's like they're not trying to just get to where the Raiders are. That would be second worst.
Yes.
So yes, I do think that you make a good point about they have added some good pieces to their defense this offseason. But I don't view any of them as like long-term solutions. Calais Campbell, okay. Yeah, he's going to be a good veteran, positive presence, a guy that, establishing a culture.
But again, I don't think Calais Campbell is a 4-down or 3-down defensive end anymore.
No, I mean, he's 37 years old. But
he's a guy on second and medium or third and long, you put Calais Campbell in. And, you see what kind of pressure he can bring. You don't even know if he can bring pressure next year. Yeah, because you're right. He's 37 years old. He's getting up there as far as NFL athletes.
He's not a reclamation project. But he's a short-term solution. And Bud Dupree is as well. Bud Dupree is more of a reclamation project. He's a little bit younger, a little bit closer to his prime, but he's been hurt the last 2 years. Right. Hasn't really been the same since suffering the season-ending injury in 2020. So you hope that he's healthy. You hope he regains some of his form, but he might not. Campbell might not be the player that he's been. They both could be. And if they are, then you're probably a playoff team. But I look at that as you add those 2 guys, then you add a pass rusher early next to those guys.
Yes.
That can learn from them and then take over next year when those guys aren't there. The free agency ads on defense, to me, weren't solutions. They were Band-Aids that you put on the unit until you find your real solutions, and you bought yourself some time to find some solutions. You upgraded the defense, and you bought yourself like a year or two with the free agency ads, and you have a year or two to find a long-term solution at edge rusher in the draft. Well, you just cut off one of those 2 years of the bridge that you potentially have because you didn't target a pass rusher until pick number 75. That's how I view this draft for the Falcons.
Yeah, and you're not going to get any argument from me, Dave. It's a disappointing draft because they didn't get that guy. Can they outscore teams? That's basically what it's going to look like this year.
What they're going to do. Or going to have to do, I think. Will the defense be better? Yes. I don't want to say that it's going to be as bad as it's been, but I still don't view it as, an elite or top 10 or even above average defense. I think in best case, they're ranked, 15th to 20th in a lot of categories, especially, pass rush. I think they're going to be hard pressed to be in the top 20 in sacks.
Yes, so do I. And again, that's going to put strain on their secondary. And it's tough for a secondary to operate like that. So, and they signed, signed another corner. They signed, and AJ Terrell. AJ Terrell's been good throughout his career, but he had a rough year last year because you can't cover a wide receiver from 4.5 to 5 seconds.
Yeah.
You just can't. You can't give a quarterback that kind of time.
Yeah.
Caden Ellis, I mentioned the linebacker from the Saints. Caden Ellis is the name that I was looking for. Couldn't think of his name. Is that good that I couldn't think of his name? No, maybe not so good.
Maybe not a good sign.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to some of our comments here. We got them flowing in. Thanks, everybody, for being part of the show.
Oh, the comments are they're coming in fast and furious.
Yeah, Justin says, we do have Calais Campbell, and he's playing edge, what I'm hearing. We also have Mbike. Am I saying that right?
Ebikite.
Ebikite. I'll get that name right by maybe the end of this season. I don't know. We'll see. Right. My concern with, this isn't really fair to Ebikite because he has nothing to do with Marlon Davidson. But I just have bad memories of we were hyping up Marlon Davidson a few years ago, and the Falcons got their edge rusher. It was second round, but they got a guy that could have been a first round pick in the second, and he's going to be like a stud. That guy was a big bust, like one of the biggest busts. I think if we went back to that draft and look at second round pick, he'd be one of the biggest busts.
Yes, he would. Absolutely.
And it's just, I guess it's just what is it called? PTSD.
PTSD.
Where it's just, and I'm getting the same vibe out of, the guy they got yesterday in the third round, Zach Harrison. And it's nothing to do with Zach Harrison.
No.
He might, from what I've read, he's a great fit. He's a top 10 edge rusher in this class, defensive end, whatever. But it's just, this team not prioritizing edge rusher in the first round and settling for second and third round options who haven't worked out lately. It's getting frustrating for me to see the repeat, the draft strategy on repeat. Strategy, draft a skill position player, and then we'll get the guys.
We will fill in the rest of the positions in the later rounds.
Right. Yeah, that's the second, the offensive line, defensive line. We'll get those guys later in the second and third round. And
problem is, you're not picking up a Pro Bowler, somebody who is going to be looked at throughout the league, who's also going to sell uniforms jerseys for you. By the way, who's going to be looked at around the league as one of the top defensive ends, top edge rushers. And you're not getting that in later rounds. So Ebikite may take a step this year and become one of the better edge rushers, but I don't think he's ever going to get to that point where teams are going to come into Atlanta and say, we got a scheme for Ebikite on the edge. We got to watch out for him. We got to tailor a blocking plan for him because he's going to hurt us otherwise.
Yeah.
It's not there.
Yeah.
Tony, I love your comments. I usually do. I really like your comments. But you liked the defensive end rotation of Calais Campbell, Taquan Graham, Zach Harrison. Grady Jarrett is more of a nose tackle. He plays inside, but I'm glad you like it because I don't. I do not like that. I don't think you can go into battle week one with that kind of defensive end rotation and say that you have improved your defensive end position. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. The way I look at it. I don't know how you feel, Dave.
Oh, no, I absolutely feel the same way. And it's tough. Again, I don't want to be super overcritical because I do think Robinson was the best player on the board. I do think that he's going to be a big boost for Ritter and help this offense and all that. It's just the overall lack of dedication, I guess, to the defense, dedication to trying to fix this edge rushing problem that frustrates me. It really frustrates me. And I don't think I'm alone, even if maybe most of our listeners are on the other side. I have heard from Falcons fans and seen online that they're frustrated too. And
it is frustrating.
Part of it is I think they wanted Carter because maybe they're a Georgia fan. But
I could see that, but then Nolan Smith would have been an excellent pickup too.
Right.
But the Eagles jumped back on that. I mean, the Eagles were smart. The Eagles did a good job in this draft. As I say, Carter is the best fit for the Eagles. I don't think Carter works as well with a lot of other teams. Nolan Smith, I think, would have been a good player for any team, but the Eagles ended up grabbing him and recognizing what he can be in their defense. So, the Eagles were smart about taking those two, and I think they came away with a A+ grade on the first day because of the two they were able to get. Justin says, I want to get to his comment about Patterson and Tyler Algier.
Is it this one?
Patterson is your Swiss Army knife. That's the thing. He's not. Oh, he says Patterson is 28 and still has at least 8 more years. Tyler Algier, that has shown he's a pretty good running back. I like Bijan, but we didn't really need him. You didn't really need him, but not for those reasons. Patterson, I still think the Falcons would have needed a running back out of this draft. Patterson is your Swiss Army knife. He is not a regular running back. And I think the Falcons are going to need him more in the slot or split wide next year than they do at running back. Algier did gain over 1,000 yards last year, but Algier is slow. Algier is a tough runner. He's a tank, but he gets into the second level and you're going to catch him. He can't pick up huge chunks of yards like even Patterson. If Patterson gets free, if he gets a step on somebody, Patterson is going to pick up a lot of big yards for you. But not all the time. He's not as experienced going through the line, trying to find a hole, making those cuts. He does it well when he gets, he gets stopped. Everybody thinks of his big plays, but he also gets stopped going into the line too. That's not something he's great at. As I say, he's just Swiss Army knife. He's the guy who comes in and people have to look at and say, well, what's Patterson going to do against me? He's not a regular running back. He's not your classic style running back.
No, he's not, but he's proven that he can be running back.
He can be a running back. He's not Bijan Robinson, though.
No.
Now, as I say, you can always get running backs in the later rounds, and they're going to be effective. The Falcons got Algier in the later round last year.
Right.
And turned out good. The only thing Algier can't do is break. He has no breakaway speed. He has no second gear. He has no third gear.
You're going to have, when you draft guys in the second, third, fourth round, they're going to have negatives. And that's Algier's negative. But Todd says Falcons will regret not taking Carter. They blew it. You can get a running back by committee in the later round. So he was a advocate for doing what we're saying is add another running back in this class, but a little bit later on.
I still don't think Carter was a fit for the Falcons.
Brian, as I said, we would hear from him that he loves.
I knew Brian was going to come up with at some point. Yes.
And we already pushed back on this narrative, but Brian disagrees with us. He likes the way the defense looks, the upgrades from the free agency. So we'll see. We'll see if that works out. I do think they'll be improved. I just don't think they're going to be good enough. I mean, they might be good enough in a weak division to make a run at the playoffs, but being a serious contender, they're not there yet. And one thing Brian did say a little bit later on, if I can find the comment, he also brought up, that you don't fix all the problems in one off season. And that's true. That's very true, Brian. We didn't expect them to. And that's why I think I've tempered expectations for this team by saying they're still not there. They're still not a Super Bowl contender yet. But the Robinson pick, to me, is a sign from the front office and the team that they think they are, that they think they're getting a guy that's going to step in on day one and help immediately and at a position that they really didn't need. So that, to me, signifies that we're trying to win now. We're trying to, make a run at this thing in 2023. And I don't know if I even want to bring this up because I want to get to some of the other picks that were made other than Robinson. But does this change how we view Arthur Smith? Like we talked about how he should have a long, long leash this year. That the expectations should still be relatively low. Like a 7 to 10 win season would be a big success, and he's not in danger of being fired. I've thought all those things or said all those things, but having Robinson now and all these pieces on offense for an offensive coach, I think the expectations are higher. He's got to do more now. Yeah. He's got to do more now to keep his job than just what he's done the first 2 seasons, I think.
Well, the thing is, I think the Falcons looked at the quarterback situation throughout the division and decided that they are a contender for the title, NFC South title this year. And that's another reason why I think they picked up Bijan Robinson, because they think they can contend for a division title, because I think the NFC South is up for grabs. And I think the Falcons feel that they've made an impact move for that. I still think edge rusher is the impact move to become a contender in the NFC South. I think they could have did that. They could have survived with Cordero Patterson and Tyler Algier as their prime running backs and still had an effective offense. Bijan Robinson adds some things out of that backfield that you don't get with Patterson and Algier. But I do think the Falcons still could have made a run at this division if they had gone edge rusher, which is where I wanted them to go with the first pick. So, in a way, I do see that Cordero and Algier are effective runners. Algier, again, picked up 1,000 yards, and I think he's going to be a great short yardage runner for this Falcons team. You need short yards on second down or third down. Tyler Algier will get them for you because he is a tough guy to bring down. He keeps his legs churning. Very, very impressive to me. I like how he runs between the tackles, but no breakaway speed. He has no other gear than first gear. So that's the problem you have with Tyler Algier. If he gets into the second level, as I said a couple of weeks, I saw Algier break into the second level. I saw Tyrann Mathieu kind of look at him and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then catch him fairly easily from behind. You don't have a guy who's going to grab you, yards and chunks on the ground. You're not going to get that a lot, but you have nobody with that potential because Algier isn't it. Patterson can, but not as well as I think Robinson gives you a chance. Robinson can go between the tackles. Robinson knows how to run around end, and I think Robinson gives the Falcons more options on their offense than their current set is. But the top 10 pick, I'm sorry, you could have done better.
Let's get some more comments. Todd reiterates kind of what I said. Coach Smith is on a short leash. Playoffs are expected for Todd. So I think that's pretty fair after I think the Falcons are sending the message that they expect to be in the playoffs with their pick so far. And I want to get to another one from Brian. He says, you can't have negative feelings on players from previous draft years. Come on, guys. I think that's true, Brian. I'm being unfair, and I admit it. I'm being unfair. I think the negative feelings I have is the overall draft strategy. And the overall draft strategy they're using, it has not worked yet. And maybe it will. We'll see. But it hasn't worked yet. Drafting defensive ends, edge rushers later on, and targeting skill position early. It'd be one thing if this organization was churning out edge rushers in the second round. They're just one after another. Every guy they pick is gold. I haven't hit on one yet. So that to me is what's frustrating. Man, we got a couple other comments I'd like to get to, but we're running short on time, and I'd like to get some other topics. But the Falcons did pick cornerback Clark Phillips from Utah with the 113th overall pick, 11th pick in the 4th round, Tom. And several people have asked us our reaction to the pick. Do you have any reaction to the Falcons taking Phillips?
A bit short, but strong. Strong guy. He's not going to receiver is not going to get the best of him physically. May not be as good on contested balls as you would like to see, but a possible starter. I mean, this is a guy who could step in and be a starter on defense or be part of a defensive rotation at corner. I do like the pick. I think they got a good pick for a 4th-round pick. So potentially very good. I'm going to give the Falcons a good grade on that one because I think you can't judge a draft by the players. You can judge a draft by the intention of the general manager and the coach, what they're trying to fill, what's trying to fix. I think the Falcons got it wrong as far as trying to fix the edge rusher situation. They haven't done that.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good pick as a corner to strengthen their defensive backfield. So I do like it.
Body Bagum does not like the pick, does not like the height of Phillips. He is 5'9", 184 pounds. Was, though, given a 3rd-round grade by Lance Zierlein from NFL.com. You're getting him in the 4th round, so that's some value there. Todd says that he would have liked to have seen Ringo to the Falcons in the 4th round, but Ringo was already gone, Todd, and I think some people have already told you that in the comments. So Ringo wasn't an option there. Obviously, you could have tried to trade up to get Ringo. That's always a possibility, and maybe the Falcons could have done put in a little bit more effort trying to trade up to get one of the edge rushers, the elite edge rushers in this class, particularly Tyree Wilson going just right before them. Could they have jumped Las Vegas to get him? I don't know. We'll see. They think they got their guy that's going to help them long-term in Robinson. Let's talk about their 2nd-round pick. Circle back to a question from way at the beginning of our show from Gary. Do you see the Falcons' 2nd-round choice, Bergeron from Cuse, slipping in at left guard, or is he a sleeper prospect at tackle, maybe even left tackle, Tom?
I don't think he's a sleeper prospect at tackle right now. I think he does slot in at left guard, and he does make this offensive line stronger. Again, another tool put there for Desmond Ridder to take advantage of. Somebody who's going to be able to add some talent on the left side of the Falcons line next to Matthew and make things better for Bijan Robinson too. I think it helps the passing game, it helps protection, it helps the running game. So I do think it was a solid pick. Linemen aren't sexy picks, but they are necessary. You've got to build from the inside out. So I do like the fact that they took Bergeron in the 2nd round. I think they got a solid player. I think they got a guy who's going to slot in, has the potential to be a day 1 starter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he slots in at left guard. Maybe long-term he could play tackle. He's got some versatility, which you love to see in a offensive line pick, especially if you're not taking him in the 1st round. But this was pretty clearly the Falcons have taken this guy to start at guard next year. And that was the one hole they had on their offensive line, and they filled that immediately with the 2nd-round pick. And I liked that pick. Again, maybe it could have been an edge rusher, but you do get a starter, and it fills a need. And if you're going to have a run-first offense like the Falcons have, they're 1st in rushing attempts last year and then draft a running back in the 1st round. Pretty clearly, they're going to run the ball a lot. I know you talked about Robinson being a pass catcher, and he's going to do that too. But with Ridder at quarterback, they're going to run. They're going to run a lot. And you need that offensive line, and the Falcons solidified that line with Bergeron in the 2nd round.
Right. Exactly. They're going to run a lot. They did last year. Well, they did it last year out of necessity because they found out, by the middle of the season, they found out Mariota couldn't throw. Mariota was late, bad making decisions, and just was not an NFL-ready quarterback. Could be a good backup in Philadelphia, but not the guy who's going to take the Falcons anywhere. And so I still think they are going to run the ball, maybe not as much out of necessity this season, We'll see how Desmond Ridder does the first few games. Does he build on what he did last season as the starter, or did we, do defensive coaches, have they figured him out? You have all off season to look at game film. Do you see some things that you can take advantage of against Desmond Ridder on your defense going into 2023? So we're going to find that out early, whether Ridder can take advantage of these pass-catching weapons that the Falcons have, and whether the Falcons are going to have to run the ball out of necessity again.
We got about 10 minutes left in the show. Let's talk draft as a whole, Tom, especially the quarterbacks. Everybody loves talking about quarterbacks. What was your reaction to, I think Bryce Young going first was pretty much a foregone conclusion, but even number 2, CJ Stroud, maybe not a surprise, but we weren't sure if Stroud would actually land with the Texans. He ended up landing right there with Houston at number 2. And then in the same division, Anthony Richardson getting drafted 4th overall by the Colts and staying in that AFC South a little bit later on because Will Levis dropped out of the first round.
Yeah.
You saw the Tennessee Titans trade up early in the second to get the Kentucky quarterback. So what was your reaction to, the quarterbacks in this class and where they ended up?
Well, what it told me is you just cannot look at mock drafts and trends, media trends. And I think Will Levis got built up a lot by the media.
Especially Mel Kiper.
And by rumor.
Loved him.
So
still loves him. Still is Mel Kiper just dying on the hill that Will Levis should be a top 5 quarterback in this class. I mean, he was harping about it yesterday.
Yeah, I know. But he didn't have the talent to be a top 5 quarterback. Again, if you listen to all the draft experts, Levis goes high. And, all this talk about CJ Stroud falling out of the first round cracked the hell out of me. Cracked me up like crazy. I couldn't believe it. And Stroud went where I thought he should go.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I thought the Texans really, I think they gave up too much, but they got a quarterback and they got the best defensive edge rusher on the board in Will Anderson, second and third.
Right.
And really made a bold move to shore up their starting units on both sides of the ball.
I think they were able to do that because they still have a first-round pick next year because of the Deshaun Watson trade. So that I think gave them confidence that we're going to fix this team right away. I mean, they've had 3 head coaches in 3 years. They're starting over again at head coach, starting over at quarterback. So let's get this thing right. And actually, I think that was one of the boldest, but maybe not smartest. I don't know if that's the right word, but I liked the aggressiveness. I think it's going to pay off for them.
It was bold, yes. As I say, Stroud, I thought was, the most physically ready quarterback in this draft. Harper has a lot of talent, and I don't see why he can't. I get tired of hearing about the hype about his height. And,
you talking about Young?
We've seen quarterbacks do well at his height before. It has to do with his leadership. How well does he lead that team on the field? Can he do the things that Panthers need him to do?
I think it's more his weight. The weight is concerning. He's not going to play at 204 pounds, which is what he weighed at the combine. He's going to play probably more at like 190, which is a big difference.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, the other quarterbacks have had success being 5'10", Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, but nobody has had success yet being 190 pounds.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
I'm not saying it's a bad pick. I just think that is the question mark.
I'm not going to argue with it right now. The Panthers did what they felt they had to do. They addressed a need. They addressed a need with a guy who was considered by a lot of draft experts as being the top pick in the draft. CJ Stroud, I think a lot of draft experts went into the offseason thinking Stroud was the second quarterback.
Yeah.
Again, would be drafted high. How Stroud fell in everybody's opinion, I don't know. But apparently, as far as NFL draft boards inside these NFL draft rooms, he did not fall. He always, teams had a high opinion of C.J. Stroud, and the Texans were in a spot to take him. It's, don't believe the hype all the time. It's because Levis all of a sudden, what's surprising about Levis is that he rose so high in everybody's estimation. Not that he went in the second round to the Tennessee Titans, that he was considered a first-round quarterback for this long of a time.
Are you surprised at all that Richardson went fourth? Because you're talking about hype, you're talking about, the guys a quarterback that came in to the process with some pretty major question marks, but got rave reviews from mock draft experts, and everybody was saying he was going to be a top 5, maybe top 10 pick if he fell a little bit. Was not expected at all to fall out of the first round. Kind of grew, at least me. Maybe this was not the way I should have viewed it, but the way I viewed it was Richardson and Levis were kind of, 1-2 in terms of the second tier of quarterbacks in this class. Yeah. And if you look at the draft board, it was really, he was in the same tier as the top 2, and Levis was the one that was much lower. But I don't know, how do you view Richardson going to the Colts at 4?
I think the Colts are taking a chance. Again, you got a quarterback who has all the physical skills, showed them off at the combine, which is where he really built up his reputation. But going back to the film, and he's not an NFL-ready quarterback right now. Can he get coached up to be obviously he's going to start for Indianapolis. They have no one better.
Really? You think he's going to start?
I think he's going to start. Unless Indianapolis, dives into the free agent market after the draft.
Well, they already signed Gardner Minshew.
Huh?
They signed Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not all that thrilled about Gardner Minshew as far as being to me, Gardner Minshew is going to be a career backup quarterback.
I mean,
I think you're signing Richardson to start.
Okay. He may very well end up starting. But that is not what I had not heard any chatter of him starting until the draft, until he actually officially landed with the Colts. The narrative all draft process long was the Colts brought in Gardner Minshew so he could maybe start, maybe, not definitely, but could maybe start if the Colts got a quarterback that wasn't ready week 1. Well, they drafted the quarterback that is the least pro ready. And now in 48 hours, it's shifted to Richardson's going to start immediately. And I don't mean to criticize you, Tom. I'm kind of just shocked by the one.
Yeah, you do.
I'm shocked by the 180 turn by the draft experts of saying that from going from Richardson isn't ready, and that the Colts were proactive and got this insurance policy, but now he's got to play immediately. I get the positives of having him play, but I am concerned if you throw him out there too early, what happens to the guy? And by all indications he's not ready.
No, he's not ready. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he's ever going to be ready. He's one of these guys who come out of college, little experience, but he has all the physical tools. I mean, we looked at Bears fans looked at that a few years ago when Trubisky came out. He has all the physical tools. He has the size. He has the hand size. Looks like a quarterback behind center. Well, I don't care how much you look like a quarterback behind center. You're not always going to be that quarterback. Zozo decided to join us for the end of the show. So get down.
And the other big thing Todd brings us up, Richardson has accuracy issues, and that's kind of the kiss of death.
That's true.
With quarterbacks, because in the past anyway, it's been, well, you can't fix accuracy with quarterbacks, which is not entirely true. Josh Allen had some accuracy issues, fixed his footwork, and was able to correct that. And I don't know if that's his best trait now, his accuracy, but he's a much more accurate quarterback
than
he was 5 years ago. So Can Richardson do that? Maybe. He's got a quarterback-minded head coach with Shane Steichen, who's worked with a bunch of different quarterbacks, did wonders with Jalen Hurts. But Jalen Hurts was a lot better college quarterback. We're hearing the comparison with Hurts versus Richardson, and I would say, well, Hurts did a lot in college.
Hurts actually showed some film in college.
Yeah.
A lot more than Richardson's shown. I think the Colts want Richardson to start. They have drafted him to be the starter because I don't think you get a lot out of Minshew. So I think the Colts want Richardson to start. I just, will he be prepared? I don't know. But that's the idea for drafting him, is you want to be able to start him.
I mean, I think whether you start Minshew or Richardson, it's not going to be a playoff season for the Colts either way.
No, it's not.
So you just kind of have to look long-term. Does Richardson benefit more by playing and learning on the fly, or does he benefit more by watching Gardner Minshew? And
that's why coaches, offensive coordinators, and general managers get all those big bucks, and we sit here talking about it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I was shocked by, I think it was Booger McFarland saying he needs to play immediately. He's only played 13 games in college. Well, okay. Yeah. That's quite the take. I played 0 games in college. Throw me out there. I need to play, right? I need to get more experience. I mean, obviously that's an extreme. That's not the case. I don't need to play. No one's hiring me as anything to play in the NFL, but it's just like, just because he has no college experience doesn't mean it's a good idea to just throw him out there.
Yeah. Todd, he's high on Zozo being the Colts quarterback.
Yeah, that's true. Todd not high on Richardson at all. And I hate being like, somebody that is negative about the kids or about the players, because they haven't really done anything wrong. It's
right.
Our complete speculation of what they're going to be and really what they're going to be with this team, and that fit and a whole lot of, is the draft successful and do these players end up being successful, is the franchise they go to and the coaching staff that they have. That plays a ginormous role.
Yeah. I've said a long time, I always grade drafts based on how well you filled holes on your team, and how do you believe in these players? Do you believe these guys are going to start and be effective? So you can only judge how effective the general manager and coach did in addressing their needs. And, after a couple of seasons of watching these guys on the field, then you can start getting an idea for whether it's been a successful draft or not.
We're out of time. We do have 2 questions related to the Falcons that I want to just very, very briefly mention. Justin asked us about Ritter. Can he be a solid quarterback for the Falcons? We'll talk a lot about Ritter as the offseason progresses. I do think the answer is yes, though. I think he can be solid, and I think the Falcons think that as well, because otherwise, why are they surrounding him with all this offensive talent? They are going to try and maximize whatever Ritter is this season with all this young talent that they've added on their offense the last 3 years.
Yeah. I think you get a excellent feel for Ritter after the season's over. There are no excuses for Ritter. But as I said, last year, I think the one thing Ritter did was win over the Falcons huddle. I think the players decided that they liked playing for him, that he had the potential, that they believe in him. They believe he can be the quarterback.
Yeah.
So, and that's a big hurdle to clear when you're an NFL quarterback. Does your huddle believe in you? Do your players believe in you? And I think the Falcons huddle does believe in Desmond Ritter.
And Todd asked a question about the Falcons front office, which I'm sorry, Todd, we just don't have time to dive into, but it's a really great question, and we're going to table it for perhaps next week. We'll get into it.
I think we can still have a great discussion about this next week. Definitely.
So we hope you all return next Saturday. I know a lot of you are regulars that join us every week, so I know you guys will be back. But some people joining in for the first time, or at least commenting for the first time. we hope to see you again in the comments section in May, June, and then come season time in September.
Yeah, come. We still got a lot to talk about. It's still going to be a fun draft. We still got a lot to look at today, and we'll cover it next week. Everybody have a great week.